Gorgeous, gorgeous girls love to read. Gorgeous, gorgeous girls listen to my book recommendations. That was a little forward, but it's fine. Welcome to yet another book video. These are 9 books that you need to read in 2022. I have read so many fantastic books this year. I have been blessed with the book gods because this has been a great year of reading for me. Therefore, I have so many good book recs for you and I can't wait to share them. I do have a Goodreads if you want to check that out. I always update when I finish a book. This year I had a goal of reading 24 books and I hit that goal. So next year, I'm challenging myself to read 50 books. So comment down below your book goals, how many books you want to read next year, and tell me your favorite book that you read this year. We have a lot to unpack here, so we're gonna begin. If you've never watched my book videos before, I do not dive that deep where I give away spoilers. I just talk about the plot lines, how it made me feel, if I would recommend it, blah, blah, blah. No spoilers here. And please, no spoilers in the comments because you will be reported and blocked. I'm very serious about spoilers. This first book has become one of my favorite books of all time. I think I will always recommend it to anyone, and that is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This book is by Taylor Jenkins Reid, who has become one of my favorite authors, and it all started with this book. I had heard so much hype around it, and I was so curious as to how this book would go and what it would be about, because the title makes you think, okay, she has 7 husbands. You typically judge someone obviously by a cover. You're like, 7 husbands, something's off there. But this book has such a beautifully tragic plot. The book is laid out in a really interesting way, you'll see when you read it, but I loved how it went through each husband in her life and broke down why that marriage happened, the purpose of it, how it ended. And it's so interesting. There are so many elements of this book to love. One, I just love this author's writing style. You feel so connected to Evelyn Hugo. You are rooting for her. You want her to find happiness and love. And Evelyn has such a complex personality that really gets broken down throughout the book, because at first you really just don't understand a lot about her, and you learn so much about her by the end of this book. Her story is actually pretty sad and you really empathize with her, and there's definitely a few extremely likable characters in this book that you will probably think about for weeks and weeks till after you read it. You're just like, ah, this person, oh my gosh. Like, basically Evelyn Hugo is ready to talk about her very glamorized and scandalous life, and she wants to do that through a writer who's going to write a memoir. Basically, she wants this writer to release her truth because there's a lot of misconceptions about her, and she wants to speak her truth, tell her full story. And the way this book wraps up, it is so good. It is so good. It is genuinely painful to me that I've already read this book because I wish I could read it again for the first time. So if you are reading it for the first time, enjoy. Enjoy. I'm gonna stick with the same author. Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote Daisy Jones and the Six. Another seamlessly fantastic book that at first I didn't think I was going to enjoy, but the further I read, the more obsessed I became with it. I have never read something like this. First of all, it's about a rock band from the 70s. I love rock music. I grew up playing Guitar Hero 3, so immediately I had a connection. You might be thinking because it's from the past that it's this boring history book, but it is genuinely one of the most captivating books I've read in a while, and it's so different from other things that I've read. I got pretty deep into this book when I realized that Daisy Jones and the Six wasn't even a real band. This is fiction. I literally thought this was real because the way the author writes about the characters made it literally seem like an actual interview memoir type of story. The look on my face when I searched up on Spotify for this band and I found out it never existed brought me a lot of pain. This story is about their climb to fame. It gives you an inside look into what the rock and roll life was like back then, what life on the road was like, what life of a rock star looked like behind the scenes. There's obviously a lot of addiction issues that it dives into, and it talks about a lot of the struggles that they faced, which I thought was very realistic feeling. But no, it doesn't stop there. There is romance sprinkled into this book that will make you kind of want to scream at it because you just have people who you are rooting for. I love the way the story is written. Basically, you get every single perspective of the rock band members and some of their team, like their management and agents. Sometimes I find with alternating character first-person books that there gets to be a lot of confusion as to what's going on, but this, I will show you an example. It's constantly going back and forth between who's talking and their perspective on what happened, which is honestly really funny because at some points in the book, one character's like, and then this happened, but the other character contradicts exactly what they said. So I think it's funny that everyone's memory serves them differently. It kind of leaves it to you, the reader, to interpret what really is the truth. The love interests in this book and their stories and their magnetic pull to each other literally feels electric. You can feel it through the book. It dives a lot into the story of Daisy Jones, who is obviously one of the main characters of this book, and her background, how she rose to fame. It's basically a story that covers how they became legendary with some spice. Definitely a must read. I have one more book from the same author, and that is Malibu Rising. I have been told so many times from you guys, thank you for your recommendations, by the way. I always love reading all of your recommendations to me. This book was recommended so much, and I can understand why, because this, it was so good, especially after reading Seven Husbands, because there's a character in this book that is very prevalent in this book. And I love when authors do that, when they have a few different books and they kind of sprinkle in characters and you're like, connecting the dots is a very fun thing. I had no idea what this book was about when I went into it. I don't really read the backs of books anymore. I don't like to read the synopsis because I like to kind of uncover that myself. So that's been something that I've been doing. This book follows the Riva family, and they've honestly had a lot of struggles, and it dives into that. It kind of has an alternating timeline from present to past, which really shows you what happened in the past and why things are the way they are in the present. Very cool. The Riva siblings are in Malibu and they are hosting their iconic, legendary summer party. It goes so deep into the lives of the Riva siblings and told in third person, so you really get a look into everyone's brain, what they're thinking. This family is trying their best to keep it together, but everyone in the family has something to hide that they're not admitting to themselves or anyone around them. The Riva's siblings' dad is Mick Riva, who is one of the husbands in Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. A lot of their issues are stemmed from him because he kept leaving them time and time again to go with other women, go pursue his rock star career. This family has a lot of deep-rooted family issues that go way back to their grandparents. The party brings absolute chaos. How do I explain this book? I'm not doing the best job. It is very hard to talk about books without diving deep into the specifics and spoilers, but I must say, this is definitely the kind of book that you read in one sitting. And that's what I'm gonna say about that. Never mind, I have one more thing to say about this. I love the ending of this book. I feel like it really wraps things up nicely. Let's talk about Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Yet another book that had so much hype around it, and I can honestly understand why. This is the kind of book I don't know why I'm like embarrassed to admit this. I was literally in bed reading this and I would actually laugh to myself, where there's not many books that can physically make you laugh out loud. It's a dying art. This author did a great job of that. I was so addicted to the writing style, the way the story flowed. I just feel like it's a very fun young romance book between two boys. Both were in families with high political power. One is the son of the President of the United States and another is a prince in England, Britain. The two of them have a long-time rivalry, obviously, because they both are in very political families and they have all of these clashing moments with each other. So they've built a little enemy situation. That rivalry kind of peaks at one point that results in them needing to do some damage control. They pretend to be best friends for the press, and pretending to be best friends snowballs into something a lot more extreme for them, but what they have with each other is kind of forbidden. One of them is very confused with coming to terms with his sexuality. The other one has a life that's under a microscope and basically can't be gay. This book was very fun to read. It was witty, it had a lot of personality. And if you're looking for something enjoyable, a great story, pretty lighthearted for the most part, I would say, I would definitely check out this book. Miss Colleen Hoover knows how to ruin my life. I read Verity. There's so much to say about this book. It's honestly insane. If you have read Colleen Hoover before, you know that she typically writes romance books that are pretty complex, but it's nothing that's too jarring. This book is the exact opposite of that. It ruined my mind for a solid 3 days after. It's a psychological thriller mixed in with romance, of course. It's unsettling. It's crazy. It's wild. You literally need to buckle up and wear a seatbelt when you're reading this because you are in for a ride with this book. With any book that you read, definitely make sure to look up the trigger warnings for it, but I'm going to say this for this book. It is a little disturbing and intense at times, so I would look into the trigger warnings before you read this book. Somehow, even though this book took a part of my brain away, that sounds so dramatic, but oh my god, my mind was spinning at the end of this book. It had a chokehold on me. It became one of my favorite books ever. Definitely another one that you just like wish that you could read again for the first time to get that thrilling experience of reading it. This literally gave me an adrenaline rush reading this book. Every chapter uncovers something that is shocking. The ending is wild. For those of you who have read this, comment down below if you're team manuscript or team letter. I'm gonna say team manuscript. I can't give away spoilers, but I'm just saying, to me, there's no logical explanation to be team letter. We can have differing opinions, but comment down below which one you are. I got a real life headache after finishing this book because my mind was spinning trying to piece everything together, because it kind of leaves you at a point where you have to figure out yourself what to believe. You have to uncover the truth yourself. It leaves it on slightly a bit of a cliffhanger where you're just like, what just happened? It's basically about a woman who is a struggling writer who gets an opportunity of a lifetime to finish the series of a very successful author whose name is Verity. They hired the struggling writer Lowen to complete Verity's books because she got into a really tragic accident where she can't finish the books. Lowen has to finish Verity's books and basically become Verity because she needs to write the book as if it's Verity writing it, which means she goes through all her notes and she finds a manuscript. It's Verity's unfinished autobiography that she wrote. That is all I'm gonna say for the little synopsis. You can go search up and read the back if you're curious. Maybe don't read this book if you're home alone. That's all I'm gonna say. Colleen Hoover. I've got another Colleen Hoover book, and that is November 9th. This book takes place on November 9th over the course of a few years, and it is an alternating timeline between the boy and girl love interest. Long story short, you gotta read the book to figure out why, but they basically agree to meet only on one day every year. Over the years, and even just meeting on one day each year, they build a very serious relationship that's kind of complicated, and there's a little mistrust that leads to someone uncovering a truth that has been hidden from them. I feel like this is one of the easier reads. For example, I feel like Verity was not an easy read, but this definitely was. There's definitely a few plot twists that I enjoyed. Some I could totally see coming and others I definitely didn't. My brain isn't absolutely messed up and scrambled like how it was with this. So if you're looking for a bit of a lighter read, this is definitely a good one. I do have a few issues with the boy main character. I'm not gonna get into them, but I do like how the storyline progresses very quickly because it makes it really easy to read. If you're gonna read this book, read this after Ugly Love because there's gonna be a spoiler if you read November 9th first. So if you're gonna read these two books, read this one first and then you can read this one. I love reading Colleen Hoover's books because she always has appearances from different characters in the books, make appearances in the book you're reading, and when you read more of her books you're like, oh my gosh, this character is in this one, and it's just kind of fun. I wouldn't say this is going down in history as one of my favorite books of all time, but it was still an enjoyable read. And sometimes I think it's good to have a mix of ones that literally leave you stunned for days, not being able to think about anything else other than that book, that are 5 stars, your favorite, and books like this where maybe 4.5 stars where you enjoyed reading them, but you wouldn't cut off your left big toe to read it again for the first time. These books I call my honorable mentions because I have talked about them in book videos before, but if you haven't watched them, I'm just gonna include them in here because I do think you should read these in 2022. Ugly Love, one of the craziest, best romance books I've read. Colleen Hoover just does a crazy good job at creating scenarios that can feel so realistic, and with the way she writes, it's very easy to feel an emotional connection to the characters, which makes reading it a lot more fun and hurtful. This is definitely one of my all-time favorites from her. If you want my more in-depth thoughts on this book, you can watch this video and go to this time. I just wanted to mention it in this video that I think you should definitely read this. Again, I'm not gonna say this for every book, but this book has a lot of sex in it, so if you're younger, I would not recommend reading this. I cried for a very long time when I finished this book. This one was definitely an emotional roller coaster for me. If you love a good thrilling book that really leaves you feeling like you need to look over your shoulder when you're reading it, because you just get this like nervous, anxious feeling when you're reading it because it's that good and it has that much of a grip on you. I would definitely check out The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. Excuse me as I butcher most of these authors' names. They do not deserve that. I'm so sorry. This book gives me very similar vibes to Verity, so if you've read The Silent Patient and you like it, check out this. If you've read this, check out this. I will say this one is definitely a bit of a harder read because, I don't know, I feel like it's written more for matured minds. There's not as much romance as in this book, but there are so many twists and turns that are absolutely insane. This book just definitely took a little bit longer to get into it, but once I was into it, I was a goner. This book, I was definitely hooked from the start, which is why I read it a lot faster, but what a trip it was to read this book. I did not expect what I saw coming. And with a lot of books, it's kind of easy to see what the twist is gonna be, what the answer is gonna reveal. I could not figure out for the life of me with this one, which is really exciting when you have no idea what's coming up. I was scared of the dark. The night that I finished this book, I was terrified of the dark. I'm kind of always scared of the dark, but a little more so after I read this. And since it is a new year, I've got to shout out this book because it is so transforming. It is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm sure you've heard of it because I feel like everyone has been talking about it lately. If you're looking to cultivate new habits, get rid of old habits that are bad, that you want to break, this is such a good book. And I think in a lot of self-help books, it doesn't give you all the tools that you need to achieve what you want to achieve, but I feel like this really lays it out in a more doable way where it feels like, okay, I actually can change my life. I can change my habits. There's a lot of cool formulas in this book to help you build new habits and break old bad ones, and I really like that, especially for the new year. I know a lot of us with a new year, you want to build new habits, and I think this is a great book to help you do that. I'm not super into self-help books like I was at one time. I feel like I'm definitely more of a fiction reader, but this is the one that I will always recommend to people. And these are 9 books you need to read in 2022. Comment down below what your favorite book that you read this last year was. Comment down below some recommendations because I'm reading 50 books, hopefully more this year. That is the goal. And so far, none of your recommendations have failed me. If you aren't a reader yet or you don't per se like to read, I guarantee you these books are gonna change that for you. All of these are linked below if you wanna check them out. And I will see you in 2022. That is wild.